Welcome to BC Artifacts, the ripe for ripping. Hey, I'm Eric, and in this video I'm gonna talk about BC artifacts and what alternative uses there might be for them. So let's first establish what are artifacts in this case, because we're not Indiana Jones out digging for things from the past, but we're talking about pieces of Business Central, and for that we might need just a tiny bit of a recent history. Is that at some point Microsoft started working with Docker containers, and they created containers for us images, Docker images that we could download. And the challenge that Microsoft had with that was that they ended up creating so many different containers, because for different versions of BC versus different localizations of BC versus different platforms. So there's a ton of different versions of BC, there's a ton of different languages, there's a ton of different versions of Windows, and x times y times z equal a bunch. So at some point Microsoft, and I guess whenever I say Microsoft in this context I actually mean Freddie, came up with the idea of how about we built the container for you based on the components that we need, so we can take a generic Windows container and then we can apply Business Central on top of that. So Microsoft only needed to expose the components of Business Central, the components needed to build a Docker container, and they did. And if you do new BC container through the BC container helper functionality, that's what's happening. Okay, so that means that somewhere out there behind whatever, somewhere there is all the BC stuff is sitting available for download. So maybe we can use that. So let's take a look at that for a second, and I'll tell you about my use cases. And maybe you have different use cases that could benefit from using this. So let's actually start here. This is a command prompt, and I have entered the command get BC artifact URL, and I have gotten a URL back here, and the URL is BC artifacts. See how big we can make this without breaking stuff. bcartifacts.azure-edge.net/sandbox/clearly-a-version/w1. So Azure Edge, let's just make sure that Azure Edge is a distribution network based on Azure, so files are available hopefully in a pretty fast version, and this URL is interesting. So, but what is this URL? So if we go to BC container helper on GitHub, here it is. And we can see here is all the source code for BC Container Helper, and let's search for Azure Edge. So we can see that we have 3 artifact URLs here. Let's make this just a tiny bit bigger. So there's an artifact URL for just called BC Artifacts, then one called BC Insider. That's if you're part of the BC Insider, that requires a key and membership of program and so on. There's also one called BC Private. I guess that's private. So the one that we're interested in is is this guy. And what we can try to do, and I already did that, is that we can figure out that this is actually a Azure blob container, and a Azure blob container is exposing. You can ask it what do they have, /comp equal list and resource type equal container and a prefix. And we can see that I have asked for 18.3.27240.28243, and then I get a list here, and I get a list of blobs. I get multiple blobs. There's a bunch of them. We can see that the first one here is, there's a URL, http bcartifacts.blob.core.windows.net, means that this is actually a Azure storage account, /sandbox/version/80, so that's the Austrian version. We can see that the next one is /AU, so that is the Australian. Then there's one called base. I guess that's different from W1. If you have know the difference between base and W1, then let me know. Belgium, Brazil, Canada, and so on. So we can see that there's a blob for each country version based on this guy. So if we change our URL, we could say 0.2 and nothing else. And then it needs to figure out how to render this as HTML. Sorry, as XML. Hang on a second. It will be there. There we go. Come on. Come on. We can do it. So now we got a way longer list, because now we just said 18.2, and there has been many builds of 18.2. So if I go down here, then you can see at the first is 26.470. But let's go down to the bottom of the page, and then we see we're on a different build here. So a long list. And in some cases you can see that there's a one called next marker, meaning that there can be more than one page if there's really many entries. So if we ask for everything, then we'll just not get a list of everything, but we'll get a next markers telling that you can ask again and then get page 2. So this is pretty cool. So you can see that the URL says /sandbox. So what we can also do is that we could do /OnPrem. Now we're asking for 18.2 OnPrem, which is a way shorter list than the sandbox. So we can see that right now here it's only one build of 18.2 that's released for OnPrem, not every single build. I think it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. And the list of countries are way shorter. And if we do OnPrem, we can go all the way back to version 10. And we see that here is version 10. So when it renders, just give it a second here. Anyway, so we have all this available. So let's dive into and say what's actually inside an artifact. And I think I downloaded one before we started. And let me actually go out here and go to users, Eric, downloads, and I can't remember. Yeah, that's the one there. So renames. So I downloaded the Canadian version. So let's just rename that to ca.zip, because it just if you just hit the URL, you just get the file name as the last bit of it. Let's do c.zip. This is partial. So now where I open this is just a zip file. So what we're getting here is a zip file, and I know this is a bit tiny, but let's just look at it. So in the root, we have a SQL backup, we have a Kronos license file, and a manifest JSON. The manifest JSON is just a file telling what we have here. So we have country Canada, a database. Is this a BC sandbox, a license file, and what is the version, and what is the platform version though? So those two does not have to be the same, that can sometimes be just a slight confusing. Anyway, apart from that, we have configuration package, so the rapid start package of the demo data in the zip file. We have all the applications and the source code, so zip files with the source code for all the apps. Hang on, let me do this again. And like languages here, and the base app, and like the secret hidden extensions for web services endpoints, API endpoints, and so on. So everything that's in here that is needed to build a Canadian version of Business Central. So we don't have the runtime, we don't have the server executables and stuff like that, but we have everything that's needed from a content perspective of BC. So let me tell you what I'm actually using this for. So I have a program that creates translations for apps. So I do all my app development in English, and then I want to provide translations for the app to a lot of other languages. And I don't want to waste either manual time or translation service time, whatever it is, to translate something that Microsoft has already translated. So if I add a field called customer NO, I know that field already exists somewhere in the base app, somewhere in the world of Microsoft. So if I need to translate if I need to translate that into German, my head was always thinking German there. If I need to translate that into German, so Kundennummer or whatever that is in German, then I might as well grab whatever Microsoft used as translation, because that's, even though in all instances that's probably better than anything else, and it's consistent with the rest of the application. So what I want to do is that I want to build myself a database of all the translations that Microsoft has done in any version, not necessarily any version, but in any language edition of BC. So that whenever I have a caption of some sort, if Microsoft are using the same caption, I just want all their translations for all languages. So step one is to build a ripper. If you know, like the old days when you have a CD ripper program that will you take a CD and then you rip the context. This is the same thing, that I want to take, well, not this list because that's the OnPrem list, but I will take a list like this, and then I want to go run through it, and I want to eventually grab all the translations that are in here and build a database of that. So that's the tool I've been working on right now. I want to show you. So I actually, and hopefully this works.
So before I, and this is pitched, before I just went out and walked the dog, I started the process. And the process, because I didn't want you guys to look at 600 megabytes of download. So I hopefully placed a breakpoint the right place. So let me walk through what this program is actually doing. So this is C#. This is written in, it's created in Visual Studio, and this code is just made to work. So don't give me any style points or lack of style points on this, because it was mostly just made to work. So at the outermost place here, we have a do loop, and the do loop is handling the next marker. So if what we're asking for is on multiple pages, then we handle that. So we start by grabbing the list we just saw, and the program is called with a prefix saying that this is what I want. So from that we get this XML list. So that becomes master. So master is an XML document. So we load that into an XML document, simply .master.load XML, and then client download string inside that one. So now we have the list of all the artifacts in a XML document structure. Then we go and do for each XML node xn in master.getElements by tag name blob. So I want a list of all tags inside this XML that are called blob. And blob is the file here. So the blob has 3 properties: name, URL, and one called properties. So from that I grab a name. I grab the country as the substring after the slash, so we can see that the name is version number / country. So I have that, and the version before it. And then I say that if this one is not the one that I ask for as a argument when I call it, then ignore it and loop through it. Otherwise, I grabbing the URL, write it on the console that, hey, we are going to download this, and then I download it. Client.download data, the URL. So I'm simply downloading the URL we get here. No fancy stuff. I'm just downloading that, and so we're getting that. So I'm putting that into a memory stream, and now we are at the point of the debugger. So now we're writing that into the memory stream, and so this is a zip file, but we have it in a stream now. So I can use the zip archive, the function which is the same as the one we have in BC, but this is the real one, the .NET version anyway. So I get a zip archive, and then I can do for each entry in zip.entries, meaning that, let's see what we have here. We have, let me switch to the right one. We have extension /appinfo.financials.json. Let me go back to this one. And then you can see that I'm actually saying that if entry.fullname ends with .app, so if this is an app file, then okay, I want to do something. So let's, F5 is, so now we're in Microsoft _any_18. I'm sorry, this is very tiny. I hope you can read this. So now I'm actually opening my translation database. So LightDB is a .NET based document store database. So I'm opening a database, and I have a collection inside that called translation.
And now I'm saying that, okay, now I want to extract this. So I'm writing out to the console that I'm extracting this app file. So we open the entry. So entry is the file in the first zip, in the big zip. And then we are getting that into a buffer. But now we're doing a trick. If you remember the video, and hopefully you saw that, otherwise, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you don't miss any of all the videos. But there's a video called something about the app file dissection, the Mad Doctor Lab, something like that, where we look at the internals of an app file. And one of the things that we discover is that an app file is a bunch of binary, but there's 40 bytes first that is a header that tells some information about the app, and then the rest of the app file is just a zip file. And so we got 40 bytes noise, and then we got a zip file. So in this case, I get rid of the 40 bytes with a block copy function. So I get the rest of the file, so I can put that in a clean stream, and then I create a new zip archive entry. So now we are in a zip file. We got an entry of the zip file. All this is happening in memory right now, so there's no actual files anywhere. So we're getting the zip file, the app file, which is a zip file, and then we're unzipping that. So in this loop, now app entry, we can see, let's see what app entry is now. That's navx manifest.xml. So now we're looking at in the app zip, we can see that there are, in this case, I know this is very tiny, I'm sorry, we can see that there are 8 entries in the app file. There's manifest, there's any.code.al, the doc comments, entitlements, and simple reference, media, ID listing, and translation, and stuff like that. So now we're going through all the entries here, and we're going to look for something that is an XLF, so a translation file. And we can see that in this guy we have one, but we just have the compiler generated XLF file that's just called g.xfl. XLF, that's very hard to say for me, I'm sorry. So we're looking for something, and we're looking for an XLF and something that's not GXLF. So in this case, this one doesn't have, so let's place a new breakpoint here and hit F5 again. And now we're back out of this one, so let's get the next file. So at some point, now we're here. So now we're looking at the Microsoft Czech language, Czechia.app. And in here we have found an app entry, a translation file called baseapplication.cs.cz.xlf. So here are actual translations. And so now we're doing the same thing again, that we're now extracting this guy. And at some point, we actually have all that. So I can put this into a XLF parser. So I have grabbed a XLF, that's not hard to say, a translation file parser in C# and done a bit of customization so it actually work with the translations we get and work with Business Central. So in just a second here, well, in a bit more than a second, because it's, there we go, couple of seconds. So now we have all that translated. So in here we got a group, and in the group we have 132,306 translations. And this one is, you are now in the %1 journal, and I'm not even going to try. But anyway, that's the Czech version of that message. So this is what I want to save. this is the information I want. So now I go for each of these. And then I have built a small structure called store translation. Actually, I call it translation, so everything has an ID in the database. So what is the source text? What is the target? An index. We'll get back to that one. A language, an origin where it's coming from, and then I'm building a hash because this is a document database, so I need a way to quickly look up any translation. So that's just easier to do with a hash. So I'm building this guy, and then this one already exists, so I'm not actually inserting, because what I have somewhere here, let's see, that was not the one. Let's go to, not this guy, this guy. You can see here are, so right now it's using the one called translation. Translation 2 was an older one. So at this point I've run through almost like 80% of all languages versions and collected almost a gigabyte of translations. So there's lots of text when you multiply by all the languages. You see, this process will just run. So if we look at the loops, we're looping through all the blobs. Then we're looping through all the apps that are in the blob. And then we're looping through all the translations that are in the app. And for each translation, we're adding it to a database. So this one will run and download and build up a database like this. And if I go to, let's just kill this guy. And then if I go to, let me do this. And I wonder what screen this one comes up on. Hang on a second, guys. So here is, and I'm sorry again, this is not the easiest one to scale. Anyway, so this is the database, translation DB. So I can do a select, and we can see that you are now in, let's actually use that one. So I can do where source equal, let me get rid of the wrong quotes here, run. So now I'm doing a query, and the query is not fast in this database, but this database is built for the direct lookup mainly. And we can see that we got a result here. And right now I got 25 translations for the "you are now in the %1" journal. And we can see the one we looked at just a moment ago with the Czech version that's there, and all those different languages. So if I want to translate something in my app, if I have the "you are now in the %1" journal text in my app, I can get the 24, because one of these are English. And 5 of them are English, but there might be difference between Canadian English, which we spell something, and American English that spells slightly different, and so on. So and we can see that that's actually the great example here is that Canadian French uses journal, and Belgian French and French and Switzerland French uses full. I don't know. Let me know in the comments how I did there. But I can do that. And I can see that this video is running long. So I think I'm going to stop here and then say I will, in a future episode, show you how I then use this to build translations into my build pipeline, and how we're dealing with computer-generated translations, how we're dealing with manual translations, and so on. So stay tuned for that, but I hope this video could be an inspiration to see that those artifacts are sitting out there. Maybe I can use them for something. In another app of mine, the object designer, at some point I was thinking, okay, I need to go through all those and get all the symbols, because I had an issue before version 18 by getting symbols in a production environment. So I was thinking, okay, I can just go and harvest all the symbols and create a little website that will host all symbols, and that way provide them to the app. That was perhaps a terrible idea, but a better solution presented itself and is currently live in the object designer. But there might be other things that you wanna grab. You might need to grab the databases for a specific version, the demo database. So this is the way: go out, grab the artifact, grab the database, or the rapid start data from a specific version. The possibilities are not necessarily endless, but there's lots of possibilities. Anyway, let's stop there, and I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye.